Okay, welcome to Bridging the Gap. Today's video is over the impacts of Roe v. Wade and how they are trickling down to other important Supreme Court cases. So today, obviously, we have Fallon, Hal,
Hey.
we have Brittany Washington,
Hey,
and
everybody.
we have Zoe Hickson.
Hi.
And obviously, I'm Kevin. So, so Zoe, I know being in a interrelational relation is a hot topic right now, and I wanted to ask you, being in one and how they're talking about overturning Loving versus Virginia. I wanted you to kind of talk about that and the ways that this has impacted you.
Okay, so I'll start with the background of the case. It was decided in June 12th, 1967, so it was 55 years ago. Mr. and Mrs. Loving, a white man and a black woman, were married in Washington, D.C., and then they went back to their home state, Virginia. And then when the police found out, they actually burst into their home at night and arrested them. And they banned them from Virginia for 25 years. They fought it, though, and the case was taken all the way to the Supreme Court to decide if it was legal to prohibit marriage based on race. And in a unanimous decision, actually, they decided that laws prohibiting interracial marriage were unconstitutional according to the Equal Protection Clause and the Due Process Clause. Equal Protection Clause prevents the passing or enforcement of discriminatory laws, and the Due Process Clause states that all citizens of the United States have the right to due process of law regardless of race or any other reason that people came up with for denying due process. So most of the South actually had the anti-miscegenation laws against interracial marriage, including Oklahoma, Texas, and then all the way to the east of that. This law banning interracial marriage with a white person being involved. So you never really think about how the white people were actually kind of the center of this, because they didn't want white people to marry a person of color and then not have white babies. So they didn't really care about, if an African American person married a Native American person or any other race besides white marrying each other, because it was actually to further white supremacy, which the Supreme Court justices said in the case. That's why they concluded that the anti-miscegenation law was to further white supremacy. They also used this case later to help same-sex marriage bans be overturned as well. And so it's been in place for a long time. In mine and my parents' lifetime, this has been decided. And so we never really known a time where interracial marriage was illegal. So under the Equal Protection Clause, it said that discrimination based on race is illegal. So I think it is a fundamental right to marry whoever you want. I think that's a good segue into what Brittany's going to talk about, the Obergefell versus Hodges. So I wanted to ask, when was it decided and why did it take so long, especially if the Equal Protection Clause helped overturn anti-miscegenation laws?
That was a very great question, Zoe, and great job explaining what that actually is for interracial couples. So just a little background on the Obergefell versus Hodges. It was actually established by the Supreme Court in June on the 26th in 2015, which has only been 7 years that they would allow same-sex couples to be married. And they did this up under the 14th Amendment. And to those of you who don't know what the 14th Amendment is, I would like to break that down to you. So it states that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. nor deny any person its jurisdictional and equal protection right of the law. So just in looking at what the 14th Amendment was, there were three words that really stuck out to me, and that's abridge, which means shorten a piece of writing or without losing sense. The next word is privilege, which is a special right, advantage, or immunity. And the word immunity in itself, which is protection of exemption, excuse me, from something, especially of an obligation or penalty. Now, when I think about how the Roe versus Wade is and the overturning of their law contradicts the 14th Amendment, I think that each thing that we're going to talk about on this segment has been or will be a violation or a contradiction to what the 14th Amendment actually is. To be able to go back and abridge, which is shorten a piece of writing without sense, losing sense, they're going back over 50 years, 7 years. I don't know what Fallon and Kevin's amount of years, but when you think about going back to a bridge, that's a contradiction of a piece of writing. So to me, us as the people cannot allow that, because somebody should be penalized for going back to a bridge what a standing rule was once made to enforce these changes, enforce or implement new laws. So I think that even with the Loving versus Virginia, I don't think that people really understand why they're making these decisions. So I'm glad that Zoe actually broke that down to the aspect of it was important to them to be able to keep white supremacy a thing. It wasn't that they cared about, you know, other ethnicities having interracial relationships. Even with me, you know, the LGBT community, it's not about them getting married, because this has only been implemented for 7 years. They hadn't even met the standard of time of 10 years that it takes to conduct a census to see what the real effects of this decision is. This is about keeping a breed of people in a superiority position. So I think that my question to Kevin and Fallon, because to my understanding, you guys are going to talk about Brown versus the Board of Education. How do you feel that the educational system value would decrease because of white supremacy and want to keep them the superior race, or even taking out the history of things that changed history in a dynamic way, such as the Loving versus Virginia or the I'm sorry,
Obergefell.
Obergefell and Hodges. Oh my God, it's such a tongue twister. But how do you feel the educational system will be affected by this?
Yeah, I'll just go real quick. So I believe that it will be affected because you're not getting that proper history that's being taught. You know, with now we're even saying that, you know, you can't teach CRT, you can't teach critical race theory. Um, you know, me and Fallon talking about, you know, Brown versus the Board of Education, and the dad, he claimed that black kids, his daughter especially, were not getting the same educational values as the other kids. You know, and my grandpa, you know, I talked to my grandpa about it yesterday, and he said, you know, when he went to Douglas, it wasn't the same textbook. Everything was different. You know what I mean? As far as the educational part goes. So we see it time and time again. So I think, you know, with Judge Clarence Thomas, you know, with him wanting to kind of revert back to that, I think it would be a huge detriment to uh, the black, you know, people of color, as far as the educational system goes. I think you need to know the proper history of where you come from and how we've got to this America how we know, and even with me, Fountain, Zoe just graduating high school in the last couple of years, there's so much misconceptions about what we learn, and they're not the truth. So yeah, but Fountain, if you want to add on to that, that would be awesome.
So Brittany, to kind of answer your question, I was focusing on Brown 2, which Kevin is focusing on Brown 1. But because Brown 1 didn't get implemented into society like it should have, the Supreme Court had to go back to Brown versus Board of Education 2, which was decided a year after Brown 1, so 67 years ago. And the question in that case was, what means should be used to implement the principles announced in Brown 1? Because some of the Southern schools and education systems were not implementing what was supposed to be implemented in Brown 1. So the Supreme Court decided unanimous, and it was the Warren Court that decided this, and they said with all deliberate speed it should be implemented, and we should act promptly. And they said the responsibility for Brown 2 was on the school authorities and the courts, so meaning the state courts. So the education system was influenced back then because Brown 1 wasn't implemented. So it's definitely going to be influenced now in today, because we couldn't even get it right the first time in 1954. So I think it's going to have a huge impact on the school systems not being able to teach history, and banning of books now, not being able to teach the critical race theory, meaning Black history, Native American history, all of that. Especially here in Oklahoma, it's not taught. So I think it's
really
influence on the educational systems.
And to kind of piggyback what y'all been saying, a lot of this has come down to kind of just white supremacy and wanting to control how we do what we do, and I think people really need to understand that, like, the people that y'all vote into office in, like, the Supreme Court and everything like that, I mean, they make all the decisions for us. You know what I'm saying? So I think we really need to understand and really start looking up these people and what they want to have happen, so we don't get torn down.
And also, I'm sorry, Kev, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm good. I'm done.
I think that even paying attention to who we're electing to go into these offices is important. But another aspect of that is actually holding them accountable to what us, the people, want and need. Because they could talk a good game to get our vote. But the thing is, we as the people have to understand that we have more power than them because they're outnumbered. And to sit back and to watch things be like, especially these laws that have been in place that people have fought for, that they even had to come to a point to agree to give us what we needed. We need to make sure that we always know we still have that same power, so that we're not going back to redo things that have been in place that have worked for society. It just didn't work for them. And also understanding that we need to progress as a country, not regress. Because going back to overturn laws when you are still negating the fact that Black people need equality and full rights, women need full rights, the children need thorough and as bad as, no matter how bad the history has been, the history is the history. If you didn't like what is in the books, they shouldn't have did it. These are facts. You can't go back just because a picture isn't pretty to say, okay, well, let's water it down. Let's make it more appeasable. History hasn't been appeasable to the people. And that's why we have fought for the progression that you see in America today. So my question to Zoe is, how do you feel that we on this platform could use our voices to be able to reach the masses to be able to get them to care about these issues?
Yeah, these YouTube videos and everything that was on like social media and everything, the radio show that we go on sometimes, is just a start to what we can do. And I think that we can like reach so many more people and inspire them to do the same thing that we're doing, either like join our cause or, you know, just speak out themselves. Because I know that a lot of people are hesitant about speaking out on like social media and everything because they follow family that may have like very opposing views to them and maybe start to, you know, cause a ruckus and, you know, go against what their family members might think. So I think just more like confidence in yourself of saying what's right isn't gonna hurt people. We need to get that in our heads more, and we can't just sit back and let these things happen. We need to speak out on what we think is right.
That's very good input. I really enjoy hearing that. What about Fallon? I'm coming to you, El Presidente. So how do you feel that we as women, because somebody brought it to my attention once we did the Roe vs. Wade episode, and they brought to my attention the fact that it wasn't just the men who were making these decisions, but there were also women. So as a woman, because it's three ladies in this group, how do you feel that we can influence those women to go back and recount their decisions?
I think that's a great question. And it kind of goes back to what Zoe was saying also. It's just putting our voices out there and hoping that some of these people that are supposed to be making decisions for us are listening to us. And, you know, that is a big misconception, is this overturning of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that it was a women problem, and it's not. It's a human problem, because it does affect men and trans people and women, of course, and children. It affects all these institutions as well. So it's really important for us to highlight that, because the men making decisions for us matter, the women, and also these children that are coming up behind our generation. They need to know, like, it wasn't just men. Was it majority men? Yes, but there was also women up there making decisions that were supposed to be influencing or reflecting our decisions, and it wasn't that. So I think just speaking out like we're doing on this right here, and maybe impacting one more person to speak out against something, that's what we have to do to get everyone together.
This is a very great answer. So Kevin, Rev Kev, come to the light. So, you know, you're interested in going to law school. So I have a very great question for you. So with me breaking down what the 14th Amendment is, do you think that us as the people could legally pursue the Supreme Court for abandoning, or not abandoning, but contradicting an amendment to invade our rights as citizens of the United States?
Yeah, I honestly think we can, because how you said earlier, we're the people, we control them basically. You know what I mean? They shouldn't control us. And I think as far as like the fundamental rights we've talked about today, like they're going against every fundamental right that we have. So we as the people, we can go back like, hey, no, like that's not right, you know, and go back and get them, you know what I mean? Because like we overall have the voices. They wouldn't be in the position they are without us voting them in. You know what I'm saying? So I think we definitely could. I would like to see it happen. You know what I mean? For one, you know, but because all the 14th Amendment was like really is just protecting us. You know what I mean? The 13th, 14th, and 15th is really especially people of color. So they just, we just, like I said, we just can't let this just slide by and we be like, oh, we don't have control over anything. We can't do anything. We have to stand up and fight for what we believe in. And when they mess up, like you said, hold them accountable. So
it's a really good question. So does anybody else have a question that you guys would like to ask one of the team members here at Bridging the Gap 34?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask. This is a 3-parter for all y'all. So is women is women, because obviously I don't know. So as women, how say afraid, like how afraid of y'all are, how afraid are y'all of the Supreme Court decisions that they're trying to make?
Who you want to go ahead, Fallon? Go ahead, Presidente.
I wouldn't necessarily say I'm afraid, because I was that one day when the decision came out.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I really learned how fast we can come together, because me and Kevin went to that event that day, and there was so many people there, and there was great speakers and talking about how we have to take action and not sit back and just wait for something to happen. We have to do it. And I think that's so important. And I felt all the emotions that day that they overturned it, but I also was motivated and ready to take action. But one of the biggest problems I had with the opinions in it was that they were referring to Roe v. Wade as they were kind of comparing it to Plessy versus Ferguson and how Brown versus Board of Education overturned that. So that's how Dobbs did with Roe. And the president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, she said there is no comparison between Roe v. Wade and Plessy versus Ferguson. Roe recognized that the liberty protected by the federal constitution includes the right of women to access abortion care, while Plessy endorsed and upheld a racial divide system that denied equality, dignity, and humanity. So Roe recognized a fundamental right. And I think I have a problem with the Supreme Court comparing it to Plessy versus Ferguson, because like she said, it upheld a racial divide system. And Roe was protecting women's rights. And that's my main problem with the Supreme Court's decision on that. While there was a lot of other Supreme Court decisions that were made this past session, and we've been we're going to cover those in our 7-day series on our Facebook, so I hope you can tune into that. But that's what I think about the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So
go ahead, Zoe.
Okay, I think is so when I do have kids, or even it just happened, I'm an adult, so it's not like unfathomable, but it's just sad to think that I could something could happen in both of either me or the child, could affect the pregnancy. It's just scary to think that could be a life or death situation because of this decision. Another thing that really saddens me and is just terrible is that women are going to be questioned over if the child dies during pregnancy, and it wasn't your fault. They're gonna question you oh, did you do that on purpose? And especially in the case of rape and incest, it's just terrible to think that you have to go through that. The is only get probably 5 years, and there's a lot of other situations into jail. So I just think that it's really putting women down in multiple ways.
It's a very great perspective to have on that, especially seeing that women are going to get questioned if they experience a miscarriage. I feel like that in itself is a whole lot of emotional trauma that they're not even thinking about at this moment. And to answer your question, from my perspective, Kevin, I don't have an opportunity to be scared, because as someone who is advocating for the rights of people, our job is dangerous in the first place. To even go 30 days with them thinking that overturning the Roe versus Wade, it shouldn't even be 30 days that the people start coming out in numbers and doing what they did for the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor protests. They started to say that we were a threat and a menace to society for how we were moving during that time. But you see, in 72 hours, they implemented the Breonna Taylor law. And I think that that's what it's going to take for them to understand that we, the people, are not reverting back to a time and an era that y'all were comfortable in. This is our era. This is our time, that our voices will be heard, that our power will be felt, that the masses will come out and join arms to be able to say, listen, enough is enough. You've already done enough. And we can't sit here and take another history book being taken out of school, another marriage being counseled because two people that love each other want to be married, or the fact that just because we're not of the same ethnicity, you think based off of your standards that we shouldn't have an opportunity to love one another. If we allow them to keep doing what they're doing, we're going to end back up in states of segregation, because this is what's going on. Whether or not they're just coming out and point blank saying it, the fact is, look at what they're doing now to save one race of people that is not one full-bred race of people. But my question is, throughout history, because there was so much rape going on during slavery, because there were so many different people getting dropped off in different places around the world out of slavery, is there one predominant race of people? Because when you look at things like Ancestry.com, even if you're Black, you're coming back with reports that you might have some Irish in you, you might have Indian in you, you might have some Caribbean in you. So is there one thoroughbred race of people? Because these genetic reports are stating otherwise. So I think that us as a people, especially me personally, I don't have time to be afraid, because they're moving fast. They're passing and signing things after creating diversions for the people that get caught up on, especially on social media. And then when you look up, they're finalizing decisions without the the common ingredient for it all. That's the people. You don't get to decide what's best for us without considering us, for real, or consulting with us. That's inconsiderate, and it's unjust, and it's unethical. Kevin, could you tell the people where to find our social media?
Yeah, Brittany, you did amazing as usual. So Instagram is Bridging the Gap _34. Facebook is just no space, Bridging the Gap 34. Our website is www.bridgingthegap34.com. Is that right, Brittany? Is that correct?
Yep, sound good to
Okay.
me.
Okay. Just making sure.
No,
And
and definitely go ahead, Fallon.
On our Instagram page, if you click on the link in the bio, it will take you to our link tree where you can also find our TikTok and Twitter and our GroupMe reminders.
So please sign up for that. Guys, be on the lookout for Fallon's working really hard on the 7 days of SCOTUS. she should probably about an hour probably found. So be on the lookout for that. And we will see y'all next week. Thank y'all.
Thank you for tuning in.